Chapter 7, A Visit with Kedar. As I hopped from one sandbag to the other in the Karnali River on our way home from school, I scanned the riverbanks looking for Kedar. In the distance, I saw him writing on a notepad set on a large rock, like a makeshift desk. "I'm going to talk to Kedar," I said to Sita. "I will be home in a few minutes." Sita wrinkled her nose. "You're not the only one interested in the village's new project. I want to come too." "And you make fun of me for being nosy," I said. "All right, come on." As we approached Kedar, I bowed in greeting and introduced Sita. "Natasti," Kedar said. "What can I do for you?" "Today at school, I saw why the site where you built something is important," I said. I told Kedar and Sita the story about the tether ball pole and how tomorrow we would try to move the pole to a firmer ground. "It's very interesting, Suman," said Kedar. "It sounds like you've already started using a system that I often use to help me figure things out, the engineering design process. It's a series of steps that engineers use to solve problems. The first step is to ask questions, like your question about where to put the pole and what soil is like in your schoolyard." "But how do you know if you've asked the right questions?" Sita asked. "Well, that's where the next steps of the engineering design process come in. You imagine lots of different possibilities," said Kedar. "I'm working on that step now. I'm trying to imagine possible spots for the tar pole based on the information I've already gathered. Maybe you can help me." Kedar reached into a bag and pulled out a large map. He unrolled it into the rocks. Sita and I each held a side of the map and leaned in to get a closer look. "I've marked on the map all of the information I learned about the soil along the riverbank. Here is where people from your village normally cross," he explained, pointing to the line he had drawn. "Over here on the sandy soil. And there is firmer soil. Now, where do you think we should put the tar pole?" "This spot would be closest to the medical clinic," Sita suggested, pointing to the bend in the river. "Maybe you should put it there." "I'm not sure," I said. "At the river bends, there's a lot of erosion." I smiled at Kedar as I repeated his words from yesterday. "I think I would put it here." I pointed to the straight part of the river with the firm soil and the riverbanks. "That's a good spot," Kedar said. "It's actually one of the spots I'm going to recommend to the village. Maybe you two can stay around to help me with the next step, coming up with a plan to present to your father and the other men in the village. Then I'm going to create a small model of the tar pole site based on my plan. Create is the next step of the process. I can run some tests on the model and finally move on to the last step, improve. I'll try to improve my site recommendations to make it the best it can be. You could try all of these steps with the pole for your game at school. I bet by the time you're done, you'll have a sturdy pole in a good spot." I leaned back from the rock, resting on my heels and gathering my thoughts. "Kedar," I said, "the tar pole won't last if we build it where Bua would like it, will it?" Kedar shook his head, "No." "But his mind seems to be made up," I added. Kedar nodded yes this time. "Kedar, what if you can't change his mind?" I asked. Kedar looked straight at me. "We can't move on with the project until we do. Or until someone else does," said Sita. We were quiet for a moment. "Suman, I think you should talk to Bua." "But I don't know if he'll listen to me," I said. "He wants to honor our traditions." "I've seen this happen sometimes in other villages," Kedar said. "Your father is trying to balance many things, not just what the village needs and wants today, but also the decisions and wisdoms of many ancestors. And he doesn't know me well yet. It takes time to build trust. If not this year, perhaps I'll have the tar pole next year." Next year, I thought. What if Aji gets sick before then? At school the next day, I took Kadar's suggestion, and I tried to use the engineering design process to find a good spot for the tetherball pole. Dipish and Animis asked many questions about what I had learned from Kadar. Then we imagined possible locations. We used all of our geotechnical engineering knowledge to pick the site we thought was best. Then we played tetherball to test our site selection. After a few improvements, we found a great spot. As I watched Tepes and my classmates playing tetherball, the pole firmly rooted in the ground, I realized how important geotechnical engineering was to a project like a tarpole. Anyone is going to have to change Bua's mind, I realized. It has to be me. Somehow, it has to be me. Chapter 8. Facing Bua. After school that day, I stood with Bua in the rice fields, helping him clear a path of land. I listened to the rhythm of my shoveling scooping the dirt, and I tried not to be nervous about what I was about to say. Bua, I began, I've been thinking about our conversation the other day by the river. Bua paused and he looked toward me for a moment before asking, What about it? He went back to work. I continued scooping dirt, looking down at my shovel as I spoke. I've been thinking about the different types of soil and earth. The soil here is soft and it's good for farming, but it's not firm and well packed as the soil in the floor of our house. The poles of the tarpole need to be in firm soil so that they stay in place. Kadar told me that the soil near where we cross the Karnali River is sandy. I'm afraid what will happen if we build the tarpole there? Bua seemed to be listening, so I continued. I know that you are older and wiser than I am. You know much more about our village, and you've had more schooling. Someday I hope I will become as wise as you are. I need to be able to get to school across the Karnali River even during the rainy season so I can learn as much as you did. More than that, I need to be able to learn from you and Aji. We need the tarpole not just so I can go to school and learn from books, but also so we can keep Aji healthy and strong. That way I can help keep learning the traditions of our ancestors from her. I could no longer hear Bua's shovel scooping, so I looked at him. Bua was looking in the direction of the temple. Suman, Bua said, our country has gone through many changes. Not all of them have been good. People in this village trust me to use both my knowledge of the old ways and my education. They trust me to guide decisions, Bua sighed. Sometimes trust is a heavy thing to carry. I'm lucky that my son is becoming both educated and wise and can help me with that weight, he said. I breathed a sigh of relief that he was not upset with me. I can see that you've truly thought about the tarpole and about the conversation we had. I think that you are right. It is my duty to make sure that you and everyone else in the village will be able to cross the river, whether it is the rainy season or not. I will talk to Kadar tomorrow, and I will ask for his recommendations about where to put the tarpole. A huge smile spread across my face. I am very grateful to you, Bua, I said. Suman, Bua said, I am grateful for you too. Chapter 9. Crossing the Karnali. 2 months later, I sat with Sita, crossing the river in the tarpole. Being there made me think of Aji. Once the tarpole was built, Aji was able to visit the doctor more often. Now her eyes sparkle like they did when I was little. From up in the tarpole, I could see our village and the temple where I took my blessing on the way to and from school each day. On the other side of the river, I could see the medical clinic and our school, with farms reaching out for miles behind them. I felt small in the tarpole, looking at the land below, but I knew in my heart that I had been a part of something big, something that would be a blessing to our village for many years to come.